Hello, this is Chef John from foodwishes.com with salt roasted chicken. That's right, this is one of those rare recipes where the name of the dish is actually the same as the ingredient list. Because that's all we're going to use, salt and chicken. And you're going to be so shocked at how flavorful, how juicy, and how amazing this comes out. But just in case, to hedge our bets, I'm also going to show you how to make a super simple thyme butter sauce. So here we go. We're going to need one big chicken. This is about a 3.5 pound chicken. We're going to want to take that out of the fridge about an hour before we use it. We don't want this ice cold. We're also going to want to take a couple paper towels and make sure we blot off any moisture from the surface. And then you know me, I like to tuck my wingtips under. I think it looks better. And by better, I mean not obscene. And as you'll notice, we're going to place that in a large skillet. And yes, you can use a roasting pan or baking dish, but you're going to see why when we get to the sauce part, why this works so well. And before I salt this, I'm going to go ahead and snip off the chicken butt. I don't know exactly why I do this, although I do vaguely remember a lecture back in culinary school about 30 years ago about some kind of gland in there, although I could have dreamt that. But anyway, I snipped that off for no good reason. And then we're going to go ahead and take some kosher salt. Regular salt will work here, but as you well know, the kosher salt has a larger crystal, is much flakier, so that's going to work better here. And we're going to start by generously salting the cavity. I'm talking about at least a teaspoon sprinkled in there. And then after internal salinization is complete, we're going to go ahead and flip it over. We're going to salt the bottom very generously. We're going to salt the sides. We're going to salt any nooks and crannies. Okay? And not just nooks and crannies. If you see a crevice, I want it salted. So basically, we're going to generously salt the entire surface except for the breasts. We're going to do that last. Because what I like to do before we salt the breast is tie the legs together. I guess I'm just afraid of moving the chicken and knocking the salt off the breasts. And with apologies to people like Thomas Keller and Jacques Pepin, I'm not going to trust this chicken. I think as long as you tie those legs together, you're going to be fine. And then the final stage of salting, a very, very generous sprinkling over the breasts. You're going to want complete coverage. Do not think you're using too much. And I'm not sure what it is, but there's just something about this method that produces a really flavorful and juicy chicken. All right, it might be the way the salt transfers the heat, although there's another theory that it's actually the power of the crystals. Oh yeah, you remember back in the 80s when people would buy crystals because of their magical powers? Well, this chicken's going to be roasted with thousands of crystals on top of it. Imagine the power of that. But anyway, why this works is much less important than how it tastes, which is amazing. So make sure you have a nice substantial coating. And then before we put it in, I'm going to take a piece of paper towel. And I'm just going to brush out the excess salts. It's okay, it's piled up on the chicken, but we don't want too much in the pan because we are going to use this pan to make the sauce with later. And by the way, make sure at this point your oven is already preheated to 450. So we're going to brush out the excess. And then we're going to place that in the center of a very well preheated 450 degree oven. And we're going to roast that in that super hot oven for between 50 and 60 minutes approximately, or until the internal temp of the thigh is 160. And when it comes out, it should look something like this. Even though we didn't use any oil, it's nicely browned, and the skin should be fairly dry and crispy. And you know what? I wish my dad was still around so he could see me getting paid for scratching a cooked chicken with a fork. He would have enjoyed that. Oh, and by the way, see those two little tears? When we bought this chicken, it was originally trussed up with string, which I removed for the video. And right where that string was tied across the breast, it split as it roasted. So I want to go on record as saying that's not my fault, and yours will not look like that. Although it didn't bother me that much because I know Photoshop, so I fixed that. But anyway, we're going to remove our chicken from the pan, and we're going to let that rest 5 to 10 minutes, which is the perfect amount of time to make our thyme butter sauce. All right, so let's go back to the skillet. And you can see a lot of that chicken fat has been rendered out. We're going to go ahead and take a paper towel and blot out like 90% of that. At that point, we can turn our heat back on to medium-high. And we're going to toss in about a tablespoon of picked thyme leaves. And we're just going to give those about a 30-second sizzle in those hot drippings. And if you're into things that smell amazing, you're really going to like making this sauce. So we're going to stir those around for a few seconds, at which point I'm going to squeeze in the juice of 1 lemon. Okay, the key to a perfectly smooth and emulsified butter sauce is some acid. So I'm going to use lemon here. You could also use white wine. You could also use vinegar. Anything that has some acidity to it generally will work. And I'm also going to put in a little splash of chicken broth. You can also put a little splash of water if you want. And by now that pan's heating up and those liquids are deglazing the bottom. So keep stirring it with a wooden spoon or spatula. It will come up to a simmer. And because we're using such a wide skillet, it's going to reduce very quickly. So just after like a minute or two of boiling, it's going to look like this. And at that point, I want you to turn the heat down to as low as it will go. And toss in a couple tablespoons of cold butter. And very important, when you first throw the butter in, you got to keep it moving. So keep stirring. Keep moving the pan. And as soon as that butter's about half melted, I like to pour in the juices from the chicken plate where our bird has been resting patiently. So we'll pour those in. That's going to thin things out a little bit. And then we'll keep stirring again, moving it again until all the butter disappears. And if at any point to adjust the consistency you need to drip in a little more stock or water, go ahead. All right, you should be shooting for something that has that texture to it. And at that point, turn off the heat. Your sauce is done. Congratulations. All we have left to do is season this up. I put a little pepper, a little salt, a little cayenne. We're going to mix that in. And then we're going to take this simple sauce and we're going to spoon it over an even simpler chicken. And that, my friends, is going to be one of the best roasted chicken dishes you've ever had. I'm serving mine over a roasted red pepper and trout bean ragu, which was very delicious. And you can see here, because we use that classic pan sauce technique, even though the sauce is made mostly from melted butter, it is not separated. It is beautifully emulsified. I could look at that all day. Although a better idea would be to eat it, which is what I'm about to do. And you can see as I cut into this, that salt-only method just produces such a gorgeous, gorgeous roast chicken. Look at that meat. I mean, you serve this to your friends, and every single time you invite them over for dinner for the rest of your lives, they will think to themselves, oh man, I hope we're having that chicken. Yeah, that one they serve with the thyme sauce, that is so good. I bet that has a ton of ingredients, which is perfect. Let your guests think that. So that'll just be our little secret. And I know we got a lot of secrets between us. It's what bonds us together. But anyway, just a really cool, simple technique that I hope you try very soon. So head over to foodwishes.com for all the ingredient amounts and more info as usual. And as always, enjoy.